centaurs, and it's like, wow, it never occurred to us that they would hate each other. But they do, because we were doing racial boundaries. We just did it with a half horse, half man, and a women's culture. So we were able to play with all these, kind of like the old Star Trek, where they could play with social issues. I think all of these elements coming together with very strong core characters, and definitely with taking Gabrielle and saying this is not a sidekick, we have to give her her own personality, her own direction. And when you think about it, the series actually was based on her. You know, I've always said that about a lot of people have, you know, I get credited sometimes as being the Gabrielle protector. And when I first started writing the series, Xena was there, she'd been explored at a certain point, and I said, well, I'm going to play around with sidekick, because I don't like sidekicks. If you're a sidekick, you're just a toy, you're once again a plot device, and we will eventually kill off the character, you know, as a cliffhanger at the ending, and everyone will go, oh my gosh, you killed off that character, and it'll be another one next year. I wanted to start exploring her reaction, because when you think about it, Xena came from, and I said this at other conventions, Xena came from an area of darkness. Well, she started as a peasant girl, she was in an area of darkness, then she went, hopefully, toward the light. You know, since the past, she was pretty much committing suicide. She buried her weapons, the next person that she thought was probably going to kill her. But she saw this girl that reminded her of herself. So Gabrielle was kind of a light there. So Xena was going from an extreme of darkness into the light, trying to recapture that innocence that she might have had at one time. Gabrielle started with the innocence. She was the peasant girl from the village, naive, optimistic. But because of her love and affection for this new friend of hers, she chose to go into the dark. That's really brave. And to me, for me personally, speaking for myself as my function in it, that became what the series was about. It was Gabrielle's journey. She was always the center and the core. It's not by accident that we implied that the entire series was based on scrolls that had been written by somebody who, oh my gosh, she's a bard. You know, it was always kind of her perspective because she took us on that journey. That's why, when we were watching I forget the names of some of the titles because we had so many different versions of them, the baby toss episode, which literally was the baby being tossed up, and the fight, catch the baby tosses up. We watched that episode, and all of us were watching the dailies, actually the first cut, and in the background, Gabrielle was literally bouncing back and forth, yelling, get on Xena. And we kind of looked at each other and we went, this cannot last. How long can she bounce around in the background if you have an action hero fighting? So when I did the Amazon episode, that's when I said I'm going to start giving her weapons. But I'm going to start out with the staff. Because I was trained with the staff when I took martial arts. It was my first weapon. And the staff is great because it is a totally defensive weapon, unless you intend to kill. But you have to make a conscious effort to do it. So we gave her the staff. Then it went to the size later on, which were obviously more formidable. Then we got rid of the whole powder puff thing, which I never understood. Ooh, that's action. Somebody couldn't stand. But the whole point of it was to progress her character, so she was an active part of it. And by the way, you might have noticed the credits changed, because it used to say guest starring, you know, Renee O'Connor. It would say, you know, Lucy Lawless, and it would say guest starring. She'd be with the guest star list. That was a unique thing that happened, because usually when those contracts are set, nobody can violate those contracts. That was done because Lucy herself said, this is ridiculous. She's as much a star as I am. Put her name next to mine. That was Lucy that did that. That is extremely rare. Okay, so with all those particular components, making that character strong, obviously the relationship between them grew. We have, I'm very proud to say, a huge number of people who interpreted to their feelings because we never violated. We have a huge subtext group, which is our lesbian community, and quite honestly, I think they're the main text group. Then we have the other group, the formerly main text group, which looks at them as being just the best of friends and the closest of friends. And the cool thing about it, I said this at conventions, we had thousands of people. I said, the cool thing is that this is really, in society, these are two diametrically opposed views. And we're all sitting here, and we're all talking about these things. And it's just awesome and wonderful. Because in the time of Xena, labels like that didn't exist. They didn't care. We had an episode where Ebony gave birth to a centaur. And nobody really commented except one person. They went, oh, it's a centaur. That was it. So how do we not break other boundaries? All we did is we just said it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant to what our stories are. It's irrelevant to our character. We didn't have to assign labels because they just didn't exist. So At this point, I'm going to now throw out for some questions. Because there's other stuff I can talk about, but I always get self-conscious when I keep talking. So, anybody have any questions at this point? Yes, right down here.
What was your favorite episode?
The question is, what was my favorite episode? This is not a combo. I'm not wired to answer those questions, only because they change from second to second. You know, which one's your favorite child? Or which child do you hate the least right now? That's the problem, that they all have things that I love for different reasons. I can always point to Dreamworker because that was my first one. I can point to The Price. By the way, I'm throwing out these titles. Is everybody familiar enough with the series to know these titles? If you're not, please raise your hand and I'll fill you in a little bit. Okay, good. I'll fill you in a little bit about what's going on. Dreamworker was the first one I wrote, and that was, I'm getting TV-eyed blurs, but that was basically Gabrielle has a blood innocence. She's never killed anybody. And that became a huge thread in the series, even though I only wrote it for that episode, but everything grows off of what's done previously. And so Morpheus basically catches her and tries to force her to kill someone because that's the sacrifice he needs in order for a marriage to take place. So that was my first one, and that one I'm in love with because it was my first one. There was a line that I put in that there are certain lines that I put in that I just kind of like, I don't know why. And there was one where Elkin, the old man, the blind man, he's telling her, it'll take you, months to break in. But as he says it, he touches her arm, and he feels her arm. He says, it'll take you months, days to break in. I don't know why that stood out there. The Price Hour was basically a low jest type of episode. The Price was where Xena and Gabrielle were trapped. Hey there.
My son lost his badge.
Oh, yes. Go rescue the universe. And get a movie done about you. That is such a ridiculous thing that nobody can figure out how to do that. A Wonder Woman, are you kidding? A Wonder Woman movie and nobody can figure it out. Well, Joss can, but it would live on Anyway, so The Price, it's the first time we've actually seen Xena afraid. They encounter a group called the Horde that is something from her past, and I remember when I wrote the scene where she realizes it's the Horde, and Xena and Gabrielle says, what are we going to do? We're going to do this, we're going to do that, how are we going to fight them? And Xena says, we're going to run. And I remember in the room, people were saying, do you think the audience will get the significance? I said, oh yeah, up until this point, Xena has not run from anything. She's faced down gods, but she says we're going to run. And they ended up in this fortress with Athenians, and they were fighting off the Horde, and there's a whole thing with Gabrielle not understanding what was going on. That was my episode where Gabrielle realized for the first time what Xena really was like. Xena had been this adventurer up until then, but she was at one time a cold-blooded warrior. And suddenly she returned to that, because that's home for her, that's comfortable for her. And her best friend was now in danger, so even more so. But Gabrielle didn't understand it. So Gabrielle, in one scene, went out because the dying soldiers out there were yelling Kalpaka. And the Athenians thought that was their god. And she realized by, with this one prisoner, that Kalpaka needs water. All they wanted was water. They're wounded. And that's any battlefield casualty wants water. You're losing lifeblood. You're losing the fluids. You want water. So she goes out to give them water. And that's the moment when Xena realizes what's happening with herself. Now that episode, the reason that's one of my favorites, is because that was written a lot about my dad. My dad was a military man. He was in Vietnam, he was in Korea. He was a frontline soldier. He was actually in the Special Forces. The man who wrestled with me, talked to me at night, bought me toys, played with me, those hands had killed people. That's a fact. I've never been able to deal with it. Not that it's like I can't deal with it, it's like I've never wrapped my head around it. And you can't unless you are a soldier. Soldiers speak in shorthand. Because nobody else can understand it. I was not a soldier, I was a military guy. And I would watch things on base that, as a child, had their own context. As I told, I was stationed in Fort Knox during the Vietnam era. And when you see an entire street with kids, just little kids laughing, they're playing, they're kidding around, they're having fun. Then you see a black sedan with two officers driving slowly down the street. You see an entire street shut down.